Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the June 13th, 2024 School Board of Manatee County Workshop. Officially want to call to order this meeting. Move to the agenda amendments that we added after publishing. Some of the presentations were updated and uploaded. So that was the only major agenda amendments. Moving to public comments. I don't think we have any public comments. No one to sign up. I do want to just say to the board, this workshop, the next workshop that we do, I'd like to do a little bit different public comment section. I'd like to be able to have at every topic a public comment section after we present and we talk and discuss. Have public comment, be able to sign up. They'll be able to sign up online at which topic. But if there's nobody, like today, there's nobody, so it really doesn't matter. But I am going to little tweak and change of the public comments. So they can comment after we discuss our topics and our items and things like that. So that'll be for next time, if there's any public comments. Item number 4 is our workshops. Item 1 under our workshop agenda today is the Citizen Financial Oversight Committee Annual Report. And we've got folks here. I know Chair Harrigan, I don't know if you want to start us off, but or if you want Mr. Chapman, or it doesn't matter to me. Yeah, you may want to move that over to you a little bit.
Okay. No, board and superintendent, thank you for having us. I want to introduce Eric D. Silvestro. He's our newest member. And then this is our vice chair now, Holly Johnson.
Morning.
And then, well, you know Mr. Chapman. He's our liaison, or our pick. Anyhow, we've been working on the 22-23 report. And Ms. Johnson was kind enough to put it together for us, and we sent it out to you to look over. And we didn't know if you all had any questions or concerns that you wanted to go over with us.
Yeah, great, thank you. So first, one, thank you very much for what you guys do. Appreciate it, because you don't get paid and you spend time on it. So thank you very much. Second, just to the board, I know that there's some recommendations, some charter recommendations, some things like that, which we definitely need to adjust, and we've discussed this many times as a board. We need to look at some things, etc. We have a time in July, a whole workshop dedicated to audit, where we've talked about it many times in many different workshops. I would like for today, not that you guys can't, hey, give us our recommendations, give us the red line, but I'd like today to make sure that we're on the actual report. All the other stuff with the charter and everything like that, what they've given to us, we'll just put right back on the workshop in July. And if you all want to come to that, absolutely, definitely do. We may have questions, and I hate to ask you to come back to another workshop, but I just want to make sure we don't get derailed. And because we've already set time to really get into what the charter looks like and that sort of thing. So I want to make sure that, and obviously you've seen the recommendations in the charter red line, but I want to make sure that for us as a board, we don't get into well off the report when we have already in our sight in the next month an actual audit committee. Both committees, I believe, is going to be the topics to discuss. So with that, are there any questions from the board about the report, or do you want to start with us questions, or do you guys want to start presenting?
Present.
We'll start with any specific questions before they get into anything from the board. No. Okay.
Presentation.
I want to just give a general.
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having us here. I just want to say it's my first year on the committee. It's been a privilege to serve and really deep dive into this and learn more about it. The report mirrors a lot like the reports in the past. However, with this report, we decided to put the charts in the body of the report and not an appendix in the back, so you weren't flipping back and forth. So you'll see like Schedule A has moved up to page 4 as opposed to being in the back. So the schedule's been dropped into the body so that it's a little bit easier to see the comments and what they're referencing. And then the final page would be the Schedule C, which just is a more detailed report of the millage categories and how and where they were spent. And that was provided by the district.
Okay. All right.
We don't have Granicus up, I'm sorry. So if you have a,
Yeah.
if you have a question,
I'm looking at
go ahead and raise hand and rock and roll. You don't have Granicus out.
Would you mind walking us through the report?
Sure, I don't mind doing that. So first page is the chairman's letter. And then the next page and a half would be a summary of the entire report, listing the committee, the mission, financial review, and conclusions. Which conclusion is that our review of the financial records and all material aspects and the proper recording and tracking of the resolution, revenue, resolution expenses, and operating reserves. So everything is reported in accordance with the statute. Then it goes into pages of analysis, which the first would be Schedule A, which would be the budget and the actual by category of the referendum. So there's a 2022-2023 budget of $58,625,760. Actual expenses $54,328,471. Schedule B, revenue and expense information between core expenses and resolution, revenues, expenses, and the difference. Then it just goes into the relevant outcome and results, which are the highlighted items to increase student achievement, which includes the letter grades and links to more information on that. Graduation rates, recruit and retain teachers and staff would be the second, which has got our year-over-year retention of all staff and then teachers. And then the school year teacher separations. And then the third point being expand career and technical education and STEM programs to prepare students for the workforce, which is also the concentration of the committee focused on the STEAM expenditures for this year, and then also took visits to the schools to see some of those items firsthand. And then the discussion and recommendations. And then finally, a recognition of the district staff here for the information that they have supplied to us and working with us. And then the final is Schedule C with more detail, broken into career and technical, science, STEM, and critical mission. And then the arts millage, which is the first year of the arts millage would be 22-23. That's contained on the last page. Thank you, Danielle.
Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Yeah.
Not to interfere with what you're trying to do for the moving to the July workshop, and I get that, but if there are recommendations in the report,
Yeah, that's fine, absolutely.
I would like to hear them.
Agreed. I was just about to say, at the end of this, you have some discussion and recommendations on the report. We're absolutely okay to discuss some of the things from the report, absolutely. I just saw the charter red line, and I know the charter red line is only a small thing. I just want to make sure that we've got to, I just don't want us to start debating, how do we fix things, how do we charter this or that, when because we've done that before, and we've got to time a workshop to debate all that. And so I don't want to waste anyone's time here either with the report, like they're here giving us a report. But absolutely, I agree. You have some recommendations on here. You can absolutely, tell us why you recommend them, of course. So you can start with whatever one you want.
I have a question about the report, actually.
Okay.
This may be for Dr. Wysong. So on page 10 of the report, Schedule C, under the paragraph elementary millage budget, the last line says 18 elementary STEM teacher salary and the STEM coordinator's salary were also funded from the STEM elementary funds. Does that mean that without the millage that those teachers would not have salaries or would not be funded, or what exactly does that mean?
Right, and so, Mr. Tatum, those are the additional teachers that are providing STEM instruction as part of, at most schools, as part of their specials rotation beyond your normal science classroom instruction. So, right, that is staffing above what the district would be able to afford if we did not have a millage.
Okay,
Can I just say one thing?
sure, yeah.
We didn't have those STEM classes before the millage in our elementary schools, just so you know, like that didn't exist. That's one of the things that we got out of this.
Okay, good. So that's I mean, not that somebody would put a false statement in, but that it's actually true that those salaries are paid, like not out of general fund money, but out of the millage, the STEM percentage of the millage money.
The class just did not
Yeah.
exist.
And
We
if
did
we-
not have that
and
in
if-
all our elementary schools like we do now for all our
Okay.
kids.
Okay, great. All right, that's good to know. Thank you. That's the only question I have.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions before they can jump into? Yeah.
On the cover letter, you have a May 22, 24 date. Should that not be
Fifth or sixth?
June 5th when you actually, that would be a suggestion on changing the date on that cover letter to reflect that. So this question, I guess, would be with Ms. Johnson, with her tenure, since she wrote this report mostly. And on the cover letter from Ms. Harrigan, it says that the third paragraph, in addition to the CFOC, actually reviewed the 12% of the STEAM. That was the primary focus of this annual report this time. Is that what that means?
Correct. So the data that we receive from the district is the STEAM, and that would be available STEAM data of the 6.5 million, the 12%.
Okay.
So we did not receive the pages and pages of details like as the 51% of the salaries that's, set aside for the teacher pay.
Okay, so then in Schedule A, it reflects what the district provided you
It would be the,
outside of the STEAM, which was the 12.16%. All of the other percentages, you didn't actually do a deep dive into, it was just collectively data given. Okay, okay.
right, so that the data is the actuals presented. However, that's an excellent point, and that's a goal of the committee for this next year would be to receive 100% of the millage data and then run sampling analysis on that.
Okay.
And then one of the recommendations later on, and then a focus of this next, the 23, 24, and then to, in the oncoming year, focus on charter schools. So each year taking a different emphasis to deep dive, a different category of the millage to take a closer and harder look at, with charter schools being the next one we'd like to deep dive. But we would like to start with 100% of that data and then be able to run a review and testing on that
Okay,
for future years.
okay.
I know that's two of the recommendations, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right, and that's where I was going next is the recommendation sheet that's separate from the report says that the second one, the bullet point, is to receive 100% of all of the expenditures on a quarterly basis, like you're getting them through the STEM right now. You're requesting that you're provided 100% of all of it, not just the STEM, and that way you can separate what you want to sample. Is that the kind of
Correct.
direction that you want to go? Okay.
Right, so that was just included in this recommendation sheet outside of the report.
Right.
That we're doing for 22, 23, so you can see. So we didn't think it necessary or appropriate to include these recommendations in with the body of the report for the school year 22, 23. But,
Moving forward.
yes, moving forward.
Right. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Vice Chair, just something to keep in mind is that if you're starting with the whole pie, right, the 100%, remember that the charter school slice comes out first because that it depends on the proportion of students, right, who are in charters versus district operated schools. And then all the other slices of the pie that are not STEM are payments to employees, right? And a lot of that is governed by memorandum of understanding. So when we talk about the 68% of the millage that is not STEM or charter, all of that is payments to employees. So that's data that can be provided to the committee, but really, again, and I don't attend the committee meetings, so it'd be interesting to see what that oversight would look like. My initial thought was really just, I mean, you're just checking calculations to make sure that people were paid based on the formulas, because all of that is payment to personnel.
I guess the charter part, they get a big lump of money from the district, but this committee's not allowed to see where they're spending it. Am I correct?
You don't either, yeah, I mean.
Nobody gets to see that, right? So I don't know if there's,
I mean,
I want to be. It's not an issue of nobody gets to see it. It's all public money. Every transaction is public record, right? So it's not secret or proprietary.
no, I'm not saying, I'm not.
But the level of oversight of the district, the level of oversight from the district is different.
Right.
But it's not that anything is secret or private.
I'm not implying that. I'm just saying that the charters, I mean, you're not gonna get the same data, detail from a charter school that you would from a school, public school. Am I correct? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah,
That's,
I mean, I don't
that's
see
one
how
of the
the charter
questions
board-
that came up in some of the committee
I don't-
meetings
yeah,
was,
I mean, I don't know how.
are we allowed to see what the charters are using the funding for? I know back when, there was a report provided to the CFOC on how much they got and what they actually used it for. And that's when it was discovered that maybe some of them was using them for, not appropriate things, and we corrected that. But I don't know if, I know they did a lot of analytical, looking at what they did get from the STEM and the arts, all the way down to Sharpies. We're not allowed to see that from the charter schools. I don't know if there's a Florida statute why we can't see where.
Miss
they're-
Barber has a comment real quick.
Yeah,
You may have to get onto a mic just for
Yeah.
these records.
for record. There you go.
We got you one right there, Mr. Chapman's helping you out.
Under the current referendum and the current statute, that oversight is not provided for. But should the referendum pass again, there's a new statute that will govern that gives that accountability.
Right.
It requires the charter schools to be given the money, requires districts to include charter schools, which we've already done, but it also requires that oversight and accountability. So should the referendum pass again, that oversight will be required, so
Okay,
Thank you.
down the road.
thank you for that clarity. Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's different from the sales tax revenue, because sales tax, they have to provide how they're gonna spend it, and then they get reimbursed. As opposed to here, they get the money and go use it wisely, you know,
Presumably.
is that gonna change
Yeah.
for,
But they're not under, if we say 51% to teachers, they don't have to follow those guidelines, correct? I mean, I don't know anybody that knows the statute in and out, but I don't know.
Not the 51%, but they do have to,
It's gotta be operational.
it has
Sure.
to be in accordance with how the referendum.
Resolution
was.
says, correct.
Resolution, yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
They can't go build a new building.
And our resolution does not say 51%.
No, right, right. It just says, retention and the careers, et cetera, yes. Okay.
Okay.
But that'll change hopefully the next go around, that we will have,
That capability.
and it'll be forced. We've had the capability now. I think we can ask them, right? I mean, Dr. Weiss, I think we can ask them.
I just want to be clear, and since I arrived, I've dealt with one issue where there was a concern about a charter school expenditure, and that school fully complied with everything we asked of. We've not encountered a situation, at least since I arrived, where someone has said, "Oh no, we're not going to provide answers to your questions."
Yeah, but it's just not required, which now it will be. Well, hopefully, again.
Okay. Because that's part of the recommendation is 100% of it. And I understand the 51% is for staffing plus whatever goes to the charter that we can't look at, but that's just one of their recommendations. It's up to the board and to the finance department, how they're able to accommodate the committee. Ms. Johnson, your experience, how do you? I want to say thank you, first of all, because you really did a lot of work behind the scenes in putting this together and getting the data from the district. And you added a lot of different things into this report, you know, like the committee members. That's never really been on there. I think that's a nice touch, to be honest with you. And the way you separated everything out, I think and putting the schedules with the analysis is a better format, in my opinion. Like you said, you're not flipping through all the pages. And just all the different data points that you included in this report, I think is great. So, you want to give us a comment on your experience?
Appreciate it. Thank you. And we did want to shorten it. We did want to just include the relevant information. Realizing that most reports like this, maybe a lot of people don't make it past page 3. They read the summary and the analysis, and then if they want to deep dive into the detail, but I believe we've made it a couple pages shorter. Just want to, hit the highlights, answer the majority questions, have that data available. And if someone had, additional questions, they can always reach out. There are some links, to some state data. They wanted to deeper dive things like letter grades, graduation rates, et cetera. But I know we're not going too much into next year, but one thing, the committee just wanted to start next year with really defining the amount of, the referendum funds for the year, and then explaining which is set and which is discretionary and non-discretionary, and how those are, because I think that there is probably a misconception that all of it is, divided equally. And things like the buckets for STEAM, they're not done based on FTE or need. So just describing which buckets are discretionary, non-discretionary, like you said, how that pie is divided up, with charter coming out first, 51% to the staff, just kind of defining that at the beginning of the report after the letter, and then going into the analysis.
Okay. Okay.
You know, I think the report was great. I actually do like it, the charts being in the middle of it and not at the end to flip back and forth. Did you have a? Did you
Yeah,
raise
I have
your
a
hand?
question. Was there an analysis or a way to measure how much went to STEM versus how much went to arts?
We did have reports where the arts spending was isolated. We did not break that out in a chart from the entire STEAM total, like it's, an additional pie chart. I will defer to see if Ms. Harrigan has the detailed totals on that. I don't have them. Right, I don't have that total from the pivot table of the arts.
I should have asked that before this meeting, I'm sorry.
No, that is an excellent question, because because the arts being new to that piece, we did kind of look at that a little heavier than some of the general STEM expenses. And then, of course, added the trips to the actual schools this year, I think, which was enjoyable for the committee. It was really exciting to see. I think Chairman Harrigan actually went to the STEM competition here locally, so it is one thing to really see it in work. Like we said, when you see the schools have the banners up, but then it says this was paid for from, arts millage, that's an exciting thing and a tangible thing for a taxpayer to actually see where the funds are going. So some of the schools had done that. It's a nice thing. You always want to.
And to give you credit, you made that suggestion early on, and I think the administration took that to heart. So I commend and appreciate and thank you, because that was
And
great
we've
insight.
appreciated, people saying it to us, or saying, you could be an event, oh, look, that, was paid for by that, or that sponsored my child going here. So, it's always nice to see exactly where the funds, not everybody has the opportunity or the time to come to a meeting or even to read an 11-page report. So some of those things, when you're out with your younger children, it's a really nice
great
thing to
idea.
see.
If you had to, I shouldn't be doing this, but if you had to guess, okay, because in the past, about $7 million would have gone to STEM. How much of a reduction did STEM, in this last year, do you think happened by moving money over to the arts? How much did the arts get?
Right, so that, if you're looking at the actual from 21 to 22, the charter school percent would be 15.13, and that was increased to just under 18%, 17.97. So that charter school percentage is going up, and then the dollar amounts each year in the pie are going up. So just in here, it looks like the actual spent on charter schools is 2.7 million.
I think she's asking about.
Well, no, she's making.
Oh, for the arts?
The
Right, so it is, so,
increase in charter resulted in a decrease in
correct,
STEAM.
yes.
So we had less to spend. And
Right, so it's taking that additional,
was that reduction shared proportionately, or?
no, I mean, I believe that the bucket is, just that bucket for STEAM, and so I don't, it wasn't done by FTE or by school, but there was a significant decrease. I do believe all the schools received a decreased budget, which the assumption would be there's more money coming in this year for the total millage. Why is my budget smaller? So I do know that some, the departments were confused by that, thinking that they would the assumption made that they would have more money to spend this year, and it was actually less, because as Dr. Weissong pointed out, the charter school money is taken out first, and then the remaining funds.
Right. Right.
Right.
Just to expand on that, thanks to the taxpayers of Manatee County and thanks to the school board, arts was added to the millage. The plan to spend the arts millage is once you for example, once you purchase a kiln for a school, for pottery and art, you don't need to buy another kiln, right? So some of those expenses are going to go down as non-reoccurring expenses occur, which is a positive because it really enhanced the arts program. The same on the STEM side. When we buy those WASED kits and some of that equipment, that is meant to last for a few years. So again, there are some non-reoccurring expenses that occurred that are positive, that enhanced the STEM and arts education in this district because of the millage, and we're seeing the positive effects of that. So I just wanted to state that as it's not that schools are getting less STEAM funds. Some of that is because of some of the expenses to really enhance those classrooms and that educational experience of those expenses that shouldn't be reoccurring, and that's something CFOC has done very well, is to look at those expenses and make sure that if a kiln is bought at one school, to make sure it's not bought again at the same school, that there is some oversight to the expenses when it comes to STEAM, and that's some of the work we do in CFOC, is to make sure that these expenses make sense, that we're not seeing some of these expenses occur every year that maybe shouldn't be, and that they're going to the right places. So, thank you.
Well, we do have reoccurring.
Oh, of course, of course.
Which are the teachers, which.
Right, teacher salaries.
That has to be, yeah.
Right, paper,
Yeah.
all the paint and all those things that get used, but some of those,
Instruments.
right, the biggest thing that really this district needed and this millage really helped was, just like Chair Harrigan said, instruments, sheets of music, music stands, some of the iPads for graphic design classes. Those are meant to last a few years. So the goal of, the role of CFOC is really to make sure that we're not seeing, 6 tubas being bought every year, that they should have some longevity to it.
You can never have too many tubas.
Yes, well, I'm a former baritone instrument player, so I wasn't strong enough to hold it. Ironically, Omar Edwards was a tuba player, by the way, which kind of makes sense. I'm a baritone, he's a tuba, it makes sense.
Okay. Next meeting.
Next meeting, yeah, new workshop idea. Was there any, for the recommendations, obviously you mentioned the majority of what you're looking for. Was there anything else that you'd like to be able to say we're
Oh, and these recommendations, okay.
I know you mentioned the two big ones.
Page 9, is that what you're talking about?
Page 9.
Or highlighted the ones going forward. Obviously, we meet every other month. So the timing, with the data when the quarters close, if we're meeting every other month, sometimes doesn't give the committee enough time to discuss those, or we're discussing it, 2.5 months after the close of that. So in order to facilitate that, we have just a change on the date and the delivery of the report. And this year we did hold a special meeting. I don't think it took us 3 meetings to finalize everything after feedback. So if you think every other month, that would take 6 months to do, so that's not conducive. So we have some recommendation on the timing and the delivery of that. So it is imperative if to get that data quarterly and not annually, then you can be doing the work throughout the year with the committee, and then just tagging on that 4th quarter at the end, so it's not as labor intensive, or the meetings are not as long to go through that. Usually 4th quarter for the district would be probably the smallest quarter of spending, because usually it's spent throughout the school year, so most of those expenditures are in. Then it would just move us to just, analyzing that, asking for detail the next meeting, then adding that into the report. So hopefully have almost a working draft of the report throughout the year and be adding data in. And then once the FTE is issued and then receiving those schedules, then those totals can be compared to the schedules before data is put into that report. So. just more on the timing of that. So I will mention that for this past school year, 23-24, we did receive the data quarterly, and that has been extremely helpful.
I would just add that thanks to the finance team under Ms. Miley, that the CFOC's getting quarterly reports. We're going to do it so that it's kind of automatic, so that the chair doesn't have to ask. You know, as soon as we know the quarter report is done. Thanks to the hard work of the finance team, we'll get that to CFOC, and then also once the final budget is reconciled and all of that, and once the board, we'll get that to you right away as well. So I think we're working better on getting data and finances to CFOC in a more timely manner, so that, as the vice chair said, they can keep this ongoing report going, so that they don't have to look at 1 year's worth of expenses in a matter of a month, and that they're kind of looking at it over the course of the year. So we'll keep fine-tuning that, but I think it's working. It worked well this year.
So So the quarterly reports that they're getting now includes everything, or just a certain portion?
Well, right now it's just the STEAM pivot table, and I'll leave it to you all to work on their recommendations of
Okay.
how to go further with that.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Anybody, Ms. Messenger, anything?
I do.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for your civic engagement. I mean, I know it takes a lot of your time, and I do like the format of the report. It's kind of got like an executive summary, and then if there's more data behind if someone would like to dig in deeper. So, and the tables were useful. They kind of showed the things that the millage is supposed to be looking at. So I thought it was an improved format from previous reports that I've looked at. So thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
No, I too, thank you very much. I attended some of your meetings and listened to some of them, and I know it was, this was kind of a rough year. A lot of changes and yeah, and for the better, you know. Wanted more detail, wanted to spend more time looking at it, and I commend that. And I think that the public, if they have if they have reservations about the usefulness of the referendum money, I think you all have demonstrated that it's very worthwhile. And I also thank you all for going to see what it's producing. That was an eye-opener for me when I got on the board. I did not really see some of the wonderful things going on in our schools, and we've got some amazing opportunities because of the STEM part of the referendum. And thank you to the taxpayers, and please get out and vote and renew this thing. So thank you. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry.
It is hard to see from an outside public perspective. You know, you're driving down the street, you can see a building, you can see new landscape or whatever, but you can't walk in unless you have children there or whatever. It's hard to just walk into a classroom and say, look at these robots they're building that are unbelievable, right? So I do thank you all for going and doing those things. I think that's big to see it firsthand if it's really working. And thank you for all your work. I know it's not easy. One thing that I think we need to discuss, and maybe breaking my rule, opening a can of worms, but just so you all know, I think something in the next month when we had this audit talk or workshop, not only about the CFOC but about the audit committee is, and I said this to Mr. Daniels when he presented last time, the amount of people involved on the committee. You know, I know on the audit side, we're finding it hard to find people and to get involved. From a CFOC standpoint, and like I said, I don't necessarily want to get into this can now, but I would like to eventually. And you guys, I'm going to ask this for the first time, so you may not even have any opinion and may want to let us know, but do you feel like the committee has enough, like, is there enough people there to really do the job, or I watched some of the meetings and there was like not a quorum, right? And so which is a frustration. You know, certain people get there and you're like, we don't have enough to do anything here. So is that a concern from the committee? And again, you may not have an answer to that right now, but
No, I mean, again, like you said, it is a committee of volunteers, and,
right.
Some employed, and there are commitments, and some have children in the schools. So I know this year the meetings were set in stone. It was just, the every other month, this first Wednesday at 2:00. So we worked at the last meeting extensively with Laura Cox, and we've actually changed our meeting days so that we had, our committee there, and we worked on committing that around everybody's current calendar and commitment, and we have those meetings mapped through December. So I feel, that communication up front, and we have those dates set so that there won't be as many conflicts. But like you said, again, volunteers, recruiting people for committees, or people having to resign or move. So we lost a committee member to an out-of-state move this year. So, I think it's challenges felt everywhere, including outside of this building and in the workforce in general. So we've added a new member, and we're actively recruiting, and I think with that meeting time, I don't see that being as challenging this year. And in the one meeting referenced, we were all nervous about that, but then we did end up obtaining a quorum, so we held that meeting. So we actually held all of the required meetings and a special meeting this year. So I am optimistic that that will work going forward. But we are always looking for new committee members as well.
You did. No, I just wanted to say I did send along some information to Ms. Spray about a really qualified person who wants to join the committee, and so hopefully you have another one coming in.
I did email him. I have not heard back.
Okay.
Trying to set up a time when we can meet with him.
Wonderful.
but-
Yeah. Pursue him, because he pursued me, so, because
Well, just the,
let him drop.
his references
radar.
and his CV and everything, I was like,
Yeah.
it's like 5 pages long. Yeah, we need him.
No,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's somebody we need.
So that's pretty exciting. And then also, you are aware that it is possible to attend these meetings virtually and that person count as a quorum, or for the
We did
quorum.
have a question about that. See, you asked that, so we can do it then, because we were told no.
Thank you for that
Okay.
confirmation.
Mr.
Okay.
Dye is, I think, around the January or
Perfect, then.
February.
That will help. That'll help. Okay,
Pursued that, and he's
That'll help.
opined that,
Okay.
yes,
perfect.
if you
Thank you.
want to
Yeah.
attend virtually, you will count. So that will help with the quorum issue.
Wonderful.
But it will have to go through Teams, am I correct?
Correct, and, yeah,
It will
Ms.
have
Cox
to
will.
go through our Teams
Yeah,
environment, so it's.
but they all have access to
Right.
Yeah.
If I could close in saying, as your liaison, it's been a real pleasure to work with all of you. I know there's been times it's been a little frustrating getting data. I want to thank the staff for providing the data. Sometimes it wasn't as timely as we wanted it to be, but it finally got to you, and we got it into the report. And it's Mr. Agnelli, is that how you say it? Yeah, Agnelli. And yeah, we are trying to get him on there, but I think this year has been, has evolved into this committee being very productive, and especially into diving into all of the data that they did get. I mean, they did get a pivot table, and they sorted, and they looked, and they brought in reports and did ask about different things that they wanted to sample. So as for me, I want to thank you all, the staff, Ms. Cox and Ms. D'Amico, and the finance department for everything that they've done to support this committee, because I think they've done a commendable job in basically a short amount of time. Once they got the data, they started rolling with it, and Mr. Chapman's been helpful on occasion. I'm just kidding. I had to do that. I had to do that. I'm sorry. You've been very supportive of this committee, and I want to thank you especially. So, anyway, next time maybe we'll bring donuts.
Makes it all
Keep
worthwhile.
everybody awake. All right.
Yeah, so thank y'all very much, and we will discuss those recommendations and any other changes that may happen in July. Y'all will know before the next school year, and I know you guys are, looking for the other data and things like that. We'll discuss that, and you'll know by the time August.
But I do
And we
want
may
to
have one more recommendation. Should I just go ahead and fill it out? I'll type it up and send it to you for July.
Oh, that's not on here?
Right.
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Sure.
I'll just.
Yeah,
okay.
and you're more than welcome to come in July, as we discuss recommendations and whatever. You know what I mean?
They'd be
Abs-
encouraged.
Are
Yeah,
they done?
absolutely, absolutely.
want their
So,
input.
Yeah.
All right. And just if we could just change the cover letter date before it's,
Yes, correct.
The
Yep,
final.
I've got that.
Is-
But the July date, do you have a date?
yeah, the July workshop.
I don't have it on me.
I have it.
Maybe Laura, if you
Yeah.
can send it out,
Is
Laura?
it the 25th?
Okay. Oh,
Am I correct?
So, let me,
maybe we have it.
look on our calendar.
Thursday, the 25th, I believe.
I believe it's the 25th.
See, paper calendars still work.
Yeah, I like that. The 25th, maybe?
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay,
July 25th, 9 o'clock,
9 o'clock.
because we're off the other 2 weeks. Yep.
And thank you, Ms. Barber, for your
All right.
participation as well.
Yeah, thank y'all very much. I appreciate it.
Well done.
Moving on to next topic would be the budget workshop.
Good job being quiet.
As y'all are getting ready, I'll kick it over to Dr. Weissong to start us off on where we're going next.
Thank you, Chairman. This is the third workshop where we are presenting data on the 24-25 proposed budget. So you have already seen the capital budget plan. You've also seen the school and district staffing plans. And so this final part of the presentation relates to the overall approach to the general fund. The governor has signed the state budget, so we have a more clear picture and confirmation of the revenues that we're expecting and an expenditure plan. Just a reminder that all of the data that you're going to see today is based on the financials as of May 28th. And that those numbers continue to change as we work through end of year and close out and payment of purchase orders and all of those pieces. So these numbers may look a little different when we get to the end of July and we bring you the tentative budget. And then, of course, they'll change again for the final budget. But this is the best information that we have today. And I'll turn things over to Ms. Sellers. I know that she's going to pause on every slide so that you can ask questions. Thank you to our very small but very talented budget department for being so far along in the process at this point in the year. Thank you.
Well, good morning, Board. I have with me today our Senior Budget Analyst, Amy Allen. Our Budget Director is on a well-deserved vacation, and it started today. Today's agenda is going to cover the budget process for next year. We're going to also go over the legislative changes and the FEFP revenue funding, the millage-funded revenue, some of the assumptions that we've made in the general fund budget, and then the general fund reserve history and the district's general fund policies. All right, so in regards to our budget process, we've already covered the most significant parts of the budget related to the staffing plan and then also the capital plan. That was just this past May. Now, July is a very busy month. On July 1st, we're going to receive the final property values from the property appraiser. And then on July 19th is then when the Department of Education is going to provide us with the final required local effort. So we will use this information to create the advertisement for the budget, and then we will also, then with that information, present in a public hearing the tentative millage and budget for fiscal year 24-25. And in September, we have the final budget also presented in a public hearing. Okay, so this is the preliminary budget as of with the data that we had as of May 28th. It is presented in a trim format, which measures the budget by the amount of incoming sources of funds, specifically the beginning fund balance for fiscal year end 24-25, along with the revenues in each fund and the transfers in each fund. So the district's preliminary budget as of May 28th was $1.58 billion. Now, the two largest pieces of the budget make up 87% of the district's budget, and that is the capital fund and the general fund. This year, the capital fund slightly surpassed the general fund as far as being 43% of the district's budget, and this is due to the carry forwards of the construction projects over multiple years and the new COPS for the two elementary schools that we will be issuing in the fall of 2024. And then in runner-up at 43% is the general fund for the operations of the district.
Ms. Sellers? Excuse me. Just so I understand the capital fund there, so that would be, again, I'm trying to educate myself a little more on all this, so that would be COPS are included in there or not?
Yes.
Okay. That would be the 1.5 mil for capital expenditures.
Correct.
That would be 0.5 cent sales tax,
Yes.
impact fees,
Correct.
a little bit of money from the state, I think we get to for like
There
capital
is some of the grant funds related to some of the hardening, that kind of a things for safety, yes.
Okay, great. Did I miss anything as far as what sources of revenue?
Those are the majority the sources of revenue for the capital funds.
Okay, great.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep.
Oop, go back.
Is any of the charter school money that is, we're being used as a conduit, is any of that included in the general fund?
For the incoming revenues, yes, because so what goes out will be in the expenditure side, but this presentation of the budget is all of the revenue, incoming sources. So you're correct, the charter schools is
So
in this
when
portion.
someone in the public says you got a $6 billion budget, how much of that is ours, is for the Manatee public school system, for our schools?
So,
I think later on, a couple slides later, I think it says. that.
Okay.
yes,
I think,
yes, we
Okay, all
cover
right,
the
I'll wait.
proportionate
Thank you.
share.
yeah, I think it shows like what the charter school, yeah.
I just want to make sure the public does not say you got a $1.6 billion.
Right, no, absolutely, right.
Right.
Yeah, so, thank you.
Because it increased this year, but it'll be increasing next year due to the increase in the enrollment for the charter schools projections.
And I get just a quick comment about the budget. You know, how many times we didn't hit it this year, I don't think. How many times you actually nail spend everything in your budget? You know what I mean?
Right.
And so there's positions unfilled, there's things that happen. So, I mean, I think last year was 1.3 and we didn't hit 1.3 this year. I mean, so, yeah, I mean, just comment. Anybody else on this page?
Only to point out that like, we're talking about like increases like as a whole, but a lot of this increase really is gonna come from additional debt that this board's gonna take on.
Correct, too.
So like if you're looking at this and going, oh, well, look how much more you have, please understand that that is based on debt the board's already taken on but hasn't yet spent,
Correct.
and future debt that this board
We'll be picking up. and
will
go out
perhaps
20
be
years.
taking on as you're budgeting right now. And so, yes, it looks like an influx of funds, but there's this, I mean, the same thing happened when we borrowed in 2017 for the high school and everything else, the new schools then. And it looked like, oh, look at all this extra money, but please understand what that really means. So just, if there's people out there saying, well, look at all this extra, well, let me tell you why there's so much extra, why capital is that much higher now.
Right, and that
Have
is,
to pay it back.
as it is the largest, that fund is the largest of this district. It is for future construction projects and the debt that goes along with
Right.
those built in.
So I have a question. On the capital, you said that part of that is carry forward. How much of that is carry forward? Is that in a presentation that I didn't see yet?
Yeah, in the capital plan, when we presented, you saw year zero, that was like in 23, 24, the funds that are left there, that those end up rolling over into the year one for 24, 25. So we presented that in the capital plan,
I can't remember what that number was. Okay, that's all right.
but yes.
I'll go back and look at that.
Thank
You're welcome. All right, so on to the highlights of the legislative changes, and this is related to the FEFP funding. So the base student allocation, the BSA, it increased $191 per FTE student. That was a 3.72%. So the increase total is $21.5 million. Of this increase, $11 million goes towards the Family Empowerment Scholarship, and another $4 million is required in the mandated program classroom and the other professional, instructional professional salary allocation of $4 million, leaving a net discretionary increase of $6.5 million for the rest of the district's needs, which includes items like the instructional materials. We've got the programs for the AP, ACE, IB, and CAPE, and there's a utility expenses increasing. The FRS has a slight increase this year, and then there's also categorical programs also increased, which was safe schools, mental health, ESE guaranteed, transportation, educational enrichment, and the class size reduction.
I have a question. Okay, when you said that the increase of 21.5 million increase was 191 per student, $191?
Yeah, 191 per student.
Okay, and then when you get down to the remaining increase, which is really what we have, we can choose where we're gonna spend it, 6.5 million, how much is that per student?
That would be,
I can do it real quick.
sorry.
We have like 40. It was like 40,000.
Sorry,
How many?
I should be able
calculator out here.
40,500, is that what he
Yeah,
said?
40,000, like 500 projection. 160.
160?
Sorry.
That doesn't look right. If you got 21.5 is 191, 6.5,
Yeah.
Divided the 6.5 million by.
We can get you the figure later.
well, I just want, again, this is also kind of,
And further on a different slide, I get down to that discretionary per student. And you could take the difference between those two to be
yeah,
able
it'd
to
be
get to
like
that.
about 25% of the $191 is available for other,
Other item.
right, is that,
Yes,
that'd be fair to say?
yes, that'd be fair to say.
Ms. Sellers? So the Family Empowerment Scholarship, by the way, were you done, Ms. Foreman? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Yes,
interrupt
I
you.
am.
how does that money flow? Does it flow to the school system and then a family applies for the scholarship and then the state kind of pulls it back from us and says, hey, a student in your district applied for this, so now we're taking that back, or how does that work, do you know?
While they include it in the funding for the district, the portion that is the family empowerment, it's adjusted out. They actually, even in the conference report, call it adjustment for the family empowerment scholarship. And we'll see in the buckets where they literally actually take that out. So we don't get, that's not in the flow through the way the charter schools is.
Okay. Okay, so it never comes to the district, it flows separately to
them,
scholarship
right?
funds and
But they must put in their parts when they want to, at least the state wants to say how much is going, they're obviously splitting it by county or by districts to be able to first account for, I'm sure, for their budget with the state.
And that would also be included in the 1.585 billion then, in the total?
No.
No, it's not. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I know we get this in a later slide, but I'll just connect it now. I'll just wait till the next slide. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Because it says it specifically. So
Okay, to Mr. Tatum's point, the Family Empowerment Scholarship increase 11 million is what you're saying, and goes towards teacher salary increase.
Oh, no. There's an increase. That 11 million is for the Family Empowerment Scholarship.
Right.
And then there's another 4 million that needs to go towards the classroom teachers and the other instructional
So
professionals.
the Family Empowerment Scholarship is 21.5 million plus the 11 million?
No,
Okay,
the increase that the district is getting from
Is
the
11.
BSA is 21.5 million.
okay,
Out of that 21.5 million, 11 million of that increase goes towards the Family Empowerment Scholarships, and another 4 million. that
and
sh-
then another 4 million
Another
goes
4
towards the
million is-
salaries.
towards the salaries, yes. There's
Okay.
a maintenance and increases pieces to that.
Okay, so it's a total of, okay.
So you take the 21.5 minus the 11 minus the 4.
Minus it, okay.
Gives us the 6.5 left to work with.
All right, I gotcha, but it does, so they are saying of that scholarship, these are the buckets you have to spend it in, am I getting that right? Has 4 million goes towards teacher salary?
Yes, yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that bucket is actually, has to be there. And
It has
that's
to go
the
towards-
only place it can be spent.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And that's where you're getting the 6.5% there, right?
As discretionary, that's what's left over for that we can work with.
Okay,
All right.
and then,
the 4 million is based. The 4 million for the teacher salary increase allocation is based on the number of teachers we have. Like, so not every district, it's 4 million.
Right.
Right,
No,
it's
not every
predicated on how
district.
many teachers
Every
you have, et
district
cetera.
gets their own
Yeah.
pieces, and in the conference report, you can literally see what all the other districts are getting for
Right.
theirs. Right.
so the other half of that, in addition to the BSA increases, the categoricals also increased.
Right.
Okay. I can't do all that in my head there, so that's quite a bit of an increase.
And you can kind of see that a little bit easier too with those increases on the bucket, the flow
When we get
chart
into
slide.
the buckets, okay.
Oh, you are. Okay. All right, so as we were talking about the mandated programs, that's what this slide is going to go over. So out of that, we have the base funding of the 326 million, and we have 131.5 million going towards mandated programs, and specifically the charter school portion that has increased due to charter school projections increasing in FTE enrollment. Then also there's an increase for the programs for the AP, ACE, CAPE, IB, and dual enrollment due to their base student allocations increasing as well. And then the big one, or one of the bigger ones that we were presented with last year was the roll-up of the categorical programs into the base funding, but the legislative mandates to provide for these programs are still in law. So any increase in the cost of these mandated programs is then paid from any BSA increase that we are provided. So specifically, where I had mentioned it on the last page, the classroom, teacher, and the other instructional professional salaries, there's that piece, but then there's also the instructional materials, the reading instruction, and the teacher classroom supplies. So these mandated programs, all of those, the rolled up last year's categoricals plus the charter school proportionate share and the ACE, those mandated programs total $131.5 million, apologies, leaving discretionary base funding of $195.2 million. This calculates to 4,767 per FTE. So to your effect, Ms. Foreman, the question that you were asking, we would take the 5,330 that we are provided less this discretionary FTE, let's see, 563 dollars in total is going towards the mandated programs out of the BSA for each student, out of the 5,330 that were given for 24-25.
Okay.
I got a quick question. Dr. Weissong, probably maybe for you. So the charter school in your FES, scholarship money, how does the state, or anybody who can answer it, I guess, how does the state predict how many students are going to take advantage of the FES scholarship or go to charter? That to me is the biggest issue with the budget process, is how can this, and what I'm assuming, could become, obviously you know what assuming does, is that do they break it down per district and they look at the trends, or do they say here's a state average of how many kids are moving, etc., and they kind of make it easy for, like, how do they come up with that you're now going to be increased by X amount of kids going to charter or scholarship?
So very broadly, there's a modeling process that happens within the Department of Education, and we get the results of the models being run different ways based on past enrollment, and then we do get an opportunity to say we think this model is most accurate for our district based on what we see, and then each district is submitting that, and that helps kind of put the state budget together. I think the key piece is that the choice landscape is changing so quickly. First of all, Florida Empowerment is a new program, and the charter piece, part of the enrollment increases there is more charters coming on board. And so the modeling now, at least from my perspective, is less reliable than it used to be, because ultimately each family is making independent choices about what option they want to choose. So you're correct, Chairman, that right now it feels like there's more art to this than science from an algorithm perspective, and so we have to make our staffing decisions based on what we think are going to happen, and as the board knows, staffing is the biggest part of the budget. If we over project, then we have to correct at day 10, And if we under project, then we're scrambling to hire more teachers, which puts, principals in schools in a difficult situation. So it's using the past data, but understanding that data is not as reliable as it once was, and then getting all of our professionals around the table and making our best guesses as to where things are going to land. And having said that, we're monitoring weekly enrollment shifts and then making adjustments to staffing, as needed. So it's not like you only get one shot at it. We're constantly monitoring, but it is a challenge. Candidly, I think where the state is getting the FES projections from is to me is a little bit opaque. I'm not, it's, and again, it's new for them too. So it's just, a function of the changing landscape. And, the ESSER funding was always a nice backstop in the midst of all of this uncertainty. We won't have that anymore, and so we have to be even more careful about how we budget and plan. I'll get back to Ms. Sellers. She may have more info on the modeling, but that's the kind of very broad view of it.
Yes, and that's what I saw too. And I know that at the beginning of the year, the charter schools themselves do a self-reporting of their projections for like 24, 25, and that then gets rolled up and sent to DOE as well. So that's the charter school piece side of it.
And that's very subjective. I mean, they're going to hopefully project themselves higher. If they're not good business people.
On this,
I'm sorry. Did you want to comment?
I was just going to add to that. You're right. I mean, each charter school is independently, mapping their enrollment. And again, at board members, as you're aware, at semester we saw some withdrawals from a charter school that impacted the enrollment at one or two charters in the spring. And the bottom line is our doors are always open to students. And so that just adds a little bit more to the complexity. But right now, I think there are more unknowns than knowns in terms of enrollment.
FCS does include homeschool as well, correct? The homeschool students can be a part of FES.
Well,
So that number is inside of that, I'm assuming. It's not broken down to private school, et cetera.
Right.
But they fall in that
one
same
big
category.
piece. Right, they're along with the private.
Yeah.
And that's not traditional home education families who are not taking any scholarship money.
Correct. If you don't
They're
take
doing
it-
their own thing.
Right.
Those numbers are not anywhere.
Correct.
I mean, we have files, but we don't track those numbers as a whole.
No, because they don't get anything,
I just want to verify on that slide, it said the projection for next year is 40,950. That does not, I just want to verify, that does not include charter schools, FES. These are students walking through the doors of
Elementary, middle, and high, right.
our, okay.
The traditional, what do you want to call it?
Thank you, better way to say it.
And that's one of the questions we've had asked about in the PM data, is looking at the number of students that we have versus charter.
Yes,
Because
that information will be provided
Yeah.
at the next one-on-one.
Because that numbers makes the difference right there. So when you were doing your 40,500 students, you were off by a few hundred.
Yeah, I know, I was off by 400 something.
Yeah, there you go.
A question that I have from this slide, from last slide. So third bullet down on slide 6, the current one we're at, third bullet down, classroom teacher and other instructional personnel salary increase, TSI, A, 21.8 million.
That's the total allocation.
Correct.
So the last slide was from the previous year.
Just from this year's.
Yeah.
But that 4 is inside that 21.8.
Correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Are we done with this slide? Oop, go back.
Fortunately not.
That's all right.
Again, back to Ms. Foreman's question about the 40,950. So on our website, it's on the homepage of the school system website, it says we have 52,000 students or so. So does that mean that approximately 12,000, well, that's actually almost 41,000, 11,000 then are charter school students? Like if I want to go out and tell the public, this is how many students we have in our school district and this is how many go to public schools, what were those numbers? It looks like the number is, well, we have about 41,000 that go to traditional public schools and we have about 11,000 or so that go to charter schools. Would that be correct or not?
I would imagine that would be part of it, but I'm not familiar with that data that's on the website.
You're right, Mr. James. So in general, the all-in number that we use, over 50,000, includes all the charters, because ultimately the board is responsible for approval, oversight, contracting, all of that. That 40,950 number that's specifically in this, that is the projection that we used when we staffed our schools for next year.
Right.
And that is our traditional 51 district operated sites. That does not include, you've got, a few contracted sites with very small numbers of students because, and then you've also got a couple of alternative sites that we directly staff. And that staffing doesn't always run on some of the strict formulas that you've seen because of the unique nature of the programming. But yes, ultimately about 40,950, that's our projection for next year. And then you would add to that contracted and alternative sites, and then you would add to that charter schools, and that gets you to the 50,000 plus number.
Got it. Thank you. Now I'm done with slide 6.
All right, so on to the flow chart of the funds, the funding from Department of Education. So we begin with the legend in the lower right-hand corner. It will help to follow the formula along. So in the gold box on the second row, we have our basic FEFP funding of $326 million, and then we have the funding of the categorical programs, which is the ESC guaranteed, the DJJ, and then we have the increase in the mental health assistance, and the safe school activities and the student transportation. All three of those are categories that the district supplements quite a bit on to achieve those particular programs. Then we have the education enrichment to arrive at the gross state and local funding of $381 million. That is in the third row at the end. Now, for the adjusted net state funds of $122 million, which is in the fourth row, this is calculated by subtracting the required local effort, which is $225 million, and then we also subtract the the Family Empowerment Scholarship adjustment, and we net it against the state-funded discretionary supplement, which nets to $32.7 million to arrive at the adjusted net state funding. Actually, that's $123 million to operate. Now, this is set up in the pattern that in the flow chart that DOE gives us as far as funding. After that, we do have the class size reduction. That is still a state funded as well too. That is $50.4 million. So when you add that to their adjusted net state funding, the total adjusted net state funding is $172 million. And then we have the remaining boxes in the fifth row, and this reflects local effort to arrive at the total adjusted funding of $462 million.
So Ms.
Bless you.
Ellers,
Thank you.
Bless you.
Ms. Ellers,
Yes.
on slide 7, please.
Yes.
So the adjusted total funding, that's everything that comes from the state to us,
Correct.
Is that right? Okay, after all the calculations are done and,
Total funding, but we've already discussed where some of these information goes.
right?
So I just wanted to at least put the flow chart of all of the fundings. This is one massive way to look at all of it, coming in.
So if the general fund, back on slide 4, is approximately $678 million.
Remember, there's beginning fund balance
There's
in
beginning
there.
fund balance,
So
which
this
was
is
100.
revenue.
Okay,
So you would almost want to, in the question of where you're going at, I'd have to pull out all of the beginning fund balances to try to get to that. But this is in the general fund only. So,
Actually, the question I'm trying to get to is, the answer is, what percentage of the general fund funding that we have is financed by the state through required local effort? That's actually what I'd like to know. Like, how much, what's the percentage that we actually fund through the 1 mil? And then what percentage of the general fund is actually given to us by the required local effort? I'm just curious.
okay. I would actually have to go and get that calculation for you because, in this particular piece of the funding, we do have the referendum that is also in the general fund as well too. To pull out the FFP, I'd have to get more of a calculation for you on that one.
Okay. You can't do that in your head right now. We need to pay you a little more money, Ms. Sellers, so you can pull that one out. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
In the first box, the FTE students of 56,470. If I back out from the slide prior of 40,000, well, if we back out the FES of 4,751, which was shown on slide 6, that leaves 10,769, which I assume are charter schools, but that doesn't match with charter school total on slide 6. Charter school, if you add 12,375 plus 4751 for home empowerment, plus 4950,
So-
that's 58,076. And so we're about 1,500 students different.
So remember also in the counts, we have the contracted sites, there's the other programs, so I don't think it's that close. I'd have to get you a better dissection of it, but the contracted sites like the Easter Seals, but then the specialty ones like Horizons, then you have the other programs, Sable and
Life.
some of those types. So we do have, there are some other figures that aren't as large that we're not parceling out when we have this discussion. But what I can say is if you ever look at the really big 190 pages of the comprehensive financial report, Schedule 21 actually does have a historic of all of the FTE, and it actually does break it out by elementary, middle, high, but then also the specialty programs, the charter schools, that kind of a thing too. So at least that full detail all the way through fiscal year 22-23 is available, broken out on that page in that section.
So that's Schedule 21.
Schedule 21. It's in the statistical section of the ACFR.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is it something that could be, I mean, that's interesting information to see. Is there a projection for this 24-25 year on that at all? Or
We
not?
have a summary of that we were going to share with you on the 101s, summarized in some of those categories that we can give to you on Monday at the board briefings.
Oh, for a briefing? Okay. AFR.
Because, and again, this goes back to the earlier conversation, the state projections for FES show significant growth. Our charters are indicating they're expecting significant growth. We don't see, for all of those things to happen, we would have to see significant reduction in students, which we don't see in our actual enrollment data. And so if we back out all of those other things and I staff schools on what's left, you run the risk that if those forecasts are incorrect, students show up on the first day and we don't have enough teachers, right? And it's very hard for principals to go and find more teachers if we give them a lot more allocations on the 10th day of school. So that staffing projection of 40,950 may be a little higher than what you would net out from all of those places, because I don't know for certain that all of the projected growth in those other areas is going to occur because students are withdrawing from district-operated schools. So they're almost independent. I mean, they inform each other, but to some extent they're independent. And so the numbers are not, when you're in a budget situation, the numbers are not going to add up perfectly, because as we're sitting here having this meeting, kids are enrolling, withdrawing, making other choices, coming back to us, leaving us. So it's always a moving target. And so, the numbers are not going to add up perfectly, keeping in mind that it all squares up in the survey reporting, right, in October and February. And so if we miss our projection by 50 students, we know we're going to get funding for 50 less students.
Right.
Across 51 schools, that may not change staffing, right? If on day one we have 200 more students than we expected, that may mean we have to add teachers, or it may be spread evenly across schools and it may all be perfect. And then the question is, among all these different programs, who's going to hit their target and who isn't? So it's all forecasting.
It's so fluid because you don't know where that student's going to land. And based on the 40,950, that could be 51,000. You never know by the growth. I know it's got to be hard to project that kind of, I mean, that's not a lot of students either. When I say 51,000, that's only how many more? You know, not many. So, okay.
Yeah, Ms. Form?
On slide 7, the required local effort, you're showing that it was 3.173 for the year just ending, and you're projecting it to go down to 3.139. Whose projection is that? And
That is off of the conference report. That's actually, you're tipping me up for the next slide. So that's off of the conference report. That was dated on March 5th, 2024. Okay.
I have one more question on this box. So the FES box, the blue one,
Yes.
that 42.5 is what
The
we are
family-
subtracting from our budget, because that's what we're giving out to the scholarships.
Correct.
But on the previous slide 6, it showed 32.7.
There you go.
Okay, so that was netting these, the 32.7. How you get that one is you have to net that against the state-funded discretionary supplement. And so that supplement, that was created to fund the non-voted discretionary millage for operations for students awarded the Family Empowerment Scholarships.
Okay.
So we have to net those two together.
Gotcha.
So to recognize that that piece is for the, so we net them.
Okay.
this finance stuff is really easy, isn't it?
Well, so, but what's surprising, like, again, like, and this is, I mean, I keep hitting, like, this, kicking this dead horse, but like 31,000 is what we did third calc for that FES. So projection state means that we're gonna have an increase of 11 million. I mean, that's 25%, right?
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, whatever. We can say what ifs all day long, but
And remember that that particular group is kids going, I think a large part going to private schools that possibly didn't tap into that
Sure.
before, that might not be in the counseling. That's
so I mean, and I only bring it up because 2 or 3 of the premier private schools don't even take these.
Right, some of them don't.
So I just don't know that number really. And again, I'm not saying we need to budget on numbers we think may or may not, right? So I get it, but yeah. So, and the other ones that do take it are only so big.
Right, correct.
But I think we're good with questions on this slide, the box slide.
All right, so the tax collector provided the estimated taxable value that's used in the conference report that's dated as of March 5th of this year, with an increase of $74.9 billion in the property values. But again, this year, the district is it's not increasing the millage rates. It is decreasing, as Ms. Foreman had noticed, and down to 3.139. Now, on July 19, we will get the official required local effort. And remember, even this past year, there was a slight change in that rate on July 19, which sent for the scramble with the advertisement. So it's a tight schedule in July. Any questions on this slide?
On the additional voting, that's the 1 mil, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you're projecting the 71? Is that right?
Yes, using the data as of March 5th from the conference report, yes. But just to note that we are projecting that there should be a slight increase to that, and when we see the values on July 1st, when those are released from the property appraisers, we'll probably see a slight increase to this amount, which, if that does increase, is a possible, if we see a change in the required local effort.
It would actually affect even the gross taxable value amount if the property values go up.
Yes.
So this whole thing could actually change depending on what the appraisals and the tax office comes up with, right?
Right.
Am I correct in that?
This is based on literally back on March 5th, from data from March 5th. So
Right.
on July 1st, we'll get more updated data.
Okay.
So
So this is from March. Okay.
Why we do this again?
Right, and that was gonna be my next question. Why don't we wait until July to look at this? Is it too late by that time for the, I know we've done the staffing and the capital, but this is just a general, correct, right?
Well, remember, staffing is within the general fund. It's the largest piece of the general fund, right?
Right.
And obviously, we can't, you can't wait until July to do staffing, right?
Right.
Because of all these personnel processes. But I think to the other point of the numbers always moving, and I want to go back and highlight what Ms. Sellers said. We may, hopefully we'll get it a little earlier, but we may get the actual required local effort as late as Friday, July 19th.
last year we got it around 3 p.m. on July.
And so Vice Chair, our budget team already knows that it's a working weekend that weekend,
Okay.
because then the board has to approve the notice to advertise that rate on Tuesday, July 23rd. So if that number moves at all, even by a hundredth of a mil, everything has to be recalculated by our team that weekend so that you're ready to vote on Tuesday. It's always a tight timeline. And so to your point, any number of things are changing, but at some point you have to stop, take the snapshot, and then get the numbers out there so everybody can ask their questions.
Right. Okay.
At least you've got the concepts now, so at least when we do the tentative budget and the final budget, we'll be able to at least present to you some of the major changes between now and when we have those to shore the difference up.
Okay. I just had a real quick question on the millage rate at 96%. Okay. How long has it been 96%?
Oh,
I'm just curious if that
It's
number-
typically, we do 96%. From what I heard one year when it was tight, that it went to 97%. But this is a typical gauge. This accounts for, remember, not everybody might not timely pay their taxes, those kind of a things. So it's a practice to not budget for 100%
Right.
of that. So the typical requirement is 96%.
Right, I just wanted to put that out there because
Yep.
I've been asked about that before.
Oh, okay.
I'm like, okay, we need to
And
do
if you
something,
pay in November, you get a 4% discount.
which I try to do every year.
Which is, yeah, less than.
So is
Right.
that the 4% then? Because that's 96%. Is that why it's at 96%, is the assumption that everybody's going to pay in November and get their,
Or some
Discount.
people don't pay at all.
Or some people don't pay at all. They might wait not to pay till, typically where you see revenues coming in is the bulk of, near the end of November,
Yeah.
December, January. It trickles off by February. And this is why when we come to the board at the beginning of the fiscal year, because the property taxes that funds the FEFP that comes to the district is delayed by the property taxes that are coming in. So that's why we do the tax anticipation notes too at the same time. So that helps.
So we don't get to spend it till we get it. Basically, is what it is, so, okay. So that's what the 96 is. Somebody said, oh, you're not charging the right amount. I'm like, I think that's based on people paying their taxes, not on, okay. Good deal, thank you. All right.
All right, so this is another demonstration to indicate that the total millage rate for the district has decreased since fiscal year 18-19. That's over 7 years. It has decreased approximately 1 mil. So this is a better picture just to demonstrate that fact, even though we've mentioned it in words, that kind of stuff. And I know you guys have seen this slide before, but does anybody have any questions about this one?
Um,
My favorite slide.
It is a good
It's
thing.
always my favorite slide.
I do have a question, Ms. Sellers.
Yes.
So if I were to try to explain this slide in layman's terms to the public, would it be correct to say something to the effect of, because property values have been going up significantly over the last few years, that the state is trying to maintain a stable amount of funding, with some increases for inflation and those type of things. And so the millage rate is actually coming down because property values are going up, and so the state, whatever magic formulas they have, they're saying, well, we don't want to keep it like we don't need to keep it back like it was in 2019, 2020, way up at 7.1, or, they're actually trying to balance this all out so that the rate that people pay is actually going down, but it still provides a stable amount of funding with maybe some increases for inflation built in there. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Well, that's what I've been saying to people, so I'm glad glad to know that I've been saying the right thing. So, okay, great. Thank you then.
All right. Okay, so on this next slide, I wanted to highlight some of the assumptions that we have in the general fund budget this year. Again, one of the largest ones, this assumption is that the charter school proportionate share is increased due to their projected increase in enrollment. And then we're also projecting that there's going to be one new charter school that will also get their proportionate share. Then we're expecting an increase in the contractual sites as well. Remember, that's what the Easter Seals, Haven, Pinnacle, Palm Shores, Just for Girls. And then we are also making an assumption that we are using the federal grant fund, ESSER, to purchase the social studies books and the science books, that total $9 million. To keep in mind that this is a particular expense that usually does come out of the general fund and will be funded after this federal grant is finished or completed. And then another assumption that we're making also too is an increase in the general health insurance rate.
I have a question, I'm sorry.
But
instructional material with the ESSER granted funds of over, close to at 9 million, actually. And that is only for the social studies. That was kind of,
Social studies was 4.8 million.
right,
And that we had that adoption go through, and then there's the science of 4.2
and the
million as well.
science. The science, okay, I see it
So
now.
if for some reason something were to happen with the curriculum on these adoptions and those books, and we'll end up looking at some other expenditures that would make sure that we were still getting the funding, but then this would become a general fund expenditure if we weren't permitted to spend that through. So that's why I'm just pointing out that these are assumptions that we have built in, that this is going to happen this way. If there's any changes, you'd see a change in the general fund.
And I can elaborate on that, so, because from this list, there is a little more risk on that item, because the state has not finalized the science adoption, meaning they have not released their list of approved texts. And board, you'll remember that our process is done because our committees gave you ranked preferences. So as soon as the state list comes out, we'll order the highest ranked approved book. But I can't begin that process until the state finishes its process. And if there were to be a delay past September 30th, when the ESSER funds end, then we're buying science books out of general fund, which swings the budget $4 million. So that's and that is a risk. It's not a high risk, but we do have to consider it. Another example would be, and this goes back to enrollment, we've ordered based on our enrollment targets, but if an extra 1,500 students shows up the first 10 days, we've got to order, right, a little more, and the goal is, again, to use that ESSER funding. But if that growth comes and the order goes after September 30, then that's coming out of the general fund. So there is just a little bit of risk related to that bullet.
And that's where I was actually going with the science, because I know we did the social studies one, but we were waiting on the state to do the science side of that, so.
But the social studies is already out.
Right,
That's
we-
already been approved.
Social studies been
right, we
approved,
did
ordered.
that.
Actually, most of the books are already here and being inventoried. So it's just a matter of making sure that all the invoices come in, that everything gets paid before the 9/30 deadline, and again, accounting for any enrollment growth. So we have less risk on the social studies, a little more risk on the science.
So, so the 4.8, is that was that the total amount of purchase of the books?
Yes.
Right, like that was the total number? Okay. And so, and if we get that all in and done by September when the ESSER grants run out, or we have to have them done, potentially, let's just say both of them happen. Let's say both the social studies and the science happen. That's $9 million that are not using in the general fund anymore. That would be added to.
No,
Fund balance.
we're already projecting, our budget is set that the grant is going to pay for that. So it's, if we.
Okay.
I'm saying this in the happenstance that it's not approved.
Sure.
Because then the general fund will be paying for it.
Gotcha.
But right now, we're budgeting for general fund not using it. So it would
gotcha.
only,
I gotcha.
your scenario would only make it, the budget would go
If
worse.
if we don't get done by September, we got to absorb that. I got
Right.
you. Okay. I read it differently, but thank you.
Do the books, just like the social studies, you get 1 year out of that, right? Or do you typically 2?
It's a 5-year adoption
5-year,
cycle
okay.
per discipline. If 100% of your order is textbook based, then you're good. But keeping in mind you're going to have consumables, although you see that more in ELA and math than maybe in
Right.
science and social studies. But you're always going to have some recurring spending. And remember that it is cyclical. So pretty soon, believe it or not, it'll be time to do ELA again. And that's where we have to be, looking downstream and setting aside money as we go, so that all of a sudden we don't need $10 million to get through an adoption, that we've been putting that money away, and that's why you need a fund balance.
But we do that through accruals, don't you? You put that through savings, you might say, for every time we have to renew that.
Out of the
Topic.
unassigned,
Right.
unassigned fund balance.
Right, okay, all right. I might be saying the wrong terms, but
I have a question on the group health insurance rate. Is that, I assume, 100% employer share?
Yeah, that's the employer share.
So are we anticipating a health insurance increase? I don't want to get into
It's,
collective bargaining.
it's a
but-
negotiated thing,
Yeah.
but we need to predict for that, and we do place a conservative group to ensure that that happens. You know.
Yeah, I was about to ask about a break. It's been an hour and a half. So, we'll stop right here. It's 10:47. Let's just go for 10 minutes. So we'll be back at 10:57. I gotta figure out why we're using the word Welcome back. So we were on the 24-25 significant assumptions of the general fund budget. Was there any other questions from anybody else on that slide? I did have just one numbers question. So on slide 6, it says that this year we had 10,130 charter schools. So the charter school proportionate share of 16.6 million. Is that total from, is that you say increase from 18.6 to 21, so is 16.6 the increase up from 18 to 21?
That's the increase. And the 21.29, hold on, that would be the increase.
Yeah.
Yes, just the
So like we are
increase.
increasing, the charters are increasing, I guess you would say.
Right,
We're
right.
sending another 16.6 to the charters,
Yes,
right?
right.
So the numbers that I was looking at from the last slide, and then again, I just maybe doing my calculations wrong. 10,130 charter kids now. We're projecting 1237.5, and that was 63 million, but it was 52 million. That's only an $11 million increase, not a 16.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? The math that I'm doing. So on slide 6, it shows
63.
charters. The first bullet, the 12,375. Subtract those two. We have a $63.6 million projected for charters. But last year at 10,130 students, that's 52 million. So it's only 11 million increase, not 16. And again, I multiplied the 10,130 by last year's 5,100, I think it was, the base allocation. So that's just where it absolutely could be me. So, and you don't have to answer that right this minute. You guys
I'll get that.
into it.
That one, I'll definitely.
It just didn't job. But I wanted to make sure I knew what the right data was, and that the 16.6 is the increase, but from 18 to 21. That's where. But you may have, if some just came to you.
But this is just general fund. This projection here, I can get that for
That's
you
fine. Yep.
for the difference
Yep.
of what's being asked for. Okay. Difference.
And I think
Are we good to go on to the next policy? Okay. All righty. The next two slides are in reference to the district's fund balance policies. So this district operates under a balanced budget, and the policy recognizes that an adequate fund balance reserve is necessary to cover unforeseen events for revenue shortfalls and changes in student enrollment. So this policy here, 6233, this established the up to 3.5% reserve for contingency fund, and the board strategic reserve of 2%, and the statutory reserve of 3%. And then the next slide has policy 6235. This one requires the monthly reporting of the fund balance to the board during the fiscal year, and it maintains a general fund reserve for the ending fund balance not classified as restricted or committed or the non-spendable of up to 5% of the general fund revenues and no less than 3%. And let's go to the next slide. All right, so this slide is covering the general fund history for the reserve percentage. Again, the reserve percentage is calculated by adding the assigned fund balance of the general fund plus the unassigned balance of the general fund divided by the total general fund revenues. Now, during the period of the federal ESSER grant, the district saw a higher reserve in the general fund, and this was due to that grant picking up operational costs of the district. Did anyone have any questions about this slide?
Other than 8.5 contingency, that was the max that we had set, am I correct?
Correct. That's like the target on the high end the board had wanted us to keep within the guardrails.
Right, right. And I feel more comfortable with that high end for reserve, because you never know
Right.
what could happen. Okay.
Now, this slide is a comparison of the budget reserve percentage that we predict at or project at the beginning of our budget that's presented to the board, and versus what the ending reserve percentage is at the end of the fiscal year. Now, the first 5 years here shown are historic, and the last 2 years, 23, 24, and 24, 25, are just the preliminary projections at this point. Remember, the data was as of March 28th when we do that. When we look at our budget, the black line, that is the budget that's given to the board. That's in September. That's the beginning of our fund balance, and it is typically lower because the assigned balances are not included in the budget because you assume that it's going to be spent. And there's also another piece to it due to vacancies, unfilled positions, but it is put in the allocation for the budget. And the blue line, this one shows the actual ending fund balance budget reserve percentage, and it does include the assigned balances remaining at the end of the fiscal year. So this was to help shore up the questions why the percentage was so low, but then we end up coming in so high. So this at least gives you history so you can see how that works or has worked in the past.
Ms. Sellers, do you happen to have dollar amounts for these percentages off the top of your available to you?
So I did write one example down. For 23-24, the final budget, that was where you see the 8.13%. That one was 42 million, and that was unassigned, and it had revenues of 528 million.
Okay.
And then you saw the projected fiscal year end that we're using for the May 28. We report 65 million in the unassigned and 96 million in the assigned, with a total of 563 million. And that change was due to an increase in our investments, the change in the third calc, DOE. We had that state-funded discretionary supplement that we recognized, the 6.7 million we had brought to budget. And then we had an expense change for vacancies, like 5.2 million. And then we even had that a staffing plan at the 10-day count change, which was another 4 million. So I did write it down, at least one of those, so you could pull that real quick to see the difference in how that goes.
So the 8.13% represents what quantity of money?
So you had the fund balance or the assigned balance of 42 million, and that would have been divided by the 528 million.
Okay. And the other one was, and at the top it was 65 million divided
Actually,
by.
add 65 and 9.6 divided by 563 million.
Because it's the assigned plus the unassigned divided by the total
Right.
revenue or expense.
Besides, divided by the total general fund revenue.
Divided by the so it was 65 plus 9.6 at the top, so it was 74.6 is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, great. And that gave us the 13.25%.
Right.
And the budgeted below it was assigned plus unassigned was 42 million divided by 528 million.
Remember, there wasn't a sign, but yes.
There was not an
divided
assigned.
by to get to the 8.13%.
So that was just unassigned, is what you're saying?
Yeah, just unassigned
Because when you give us a budget,
at the beginning.
yeah, there's just an
Don't have any
there's
assigned.
nothing assigned
Right.
because you haven't spent it yet.
Yeah, there's some that, yes, correct.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
So I guess, does this show how much we would carry forward in it all?
Oh, no, I'm not, we don't have that yet, but we'll be able to see that when we've got the tentative budget. And we'll be able to see that carry forward in that. Remember, that's when we come in with a budget book, you'll have that for tentative and final.
Okay.
All right, and this concludes my presentation. So, all right,
Great job, thank you.
Thank you.
thank you very much, you guys.
Thoughts, concerns?
I thought it was well organized and easily presented, so even an old Air Force pilot could figure it out, so.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And next topic is our comprehensive district technology plan. Dr. Wysong is, Mr. Hanson's coming up. Do you want to go talk about a little bit what this is?
Sure. Thank you, Chairman. Board members, we've given you a draft of a 5-year technology plan. And there was a board member request to just answer questions in a workshop format. So Mr. Rinaldi and Mr. Hanson are here to do that. We don't have a formal presentation, and we're not going through every page of it. Keep in mind that this is a 5-year plan that, if the board is ready, we could bring back for approval at the July meeting, in which case our start date really would be August 12th, so it would begin the 24-25 school year. After some further conversations among us, what I would like to do then is, once there is board approval on whatever timeline the board would want, then we would just bring any changes back annually, even though it's a 5-year plan, because the reality is the 5-year capital plan is always changing, and then at some point a future board will redo the strategic plan, and that will change the technology plan as well. So we'll just put this on an annual cycle, like we do the SPP or the Code of Conduct, and that'll include a red line version so that each year you can see changes. I know Mr. Hanson's working on a summary change document so that for historical purposes, you'll know what the most significant changes were from the last 5-year plan to this 5-year plan. So that's how we'll move forward. But again, this is an opportunity for you to ask questions.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Go ahead. Oh, do you want to
Sure, yes, so just.
start with some little, and then we'll start
Absolutely. So, board chair, board members, superintendent, community members, thank you for the opportunity to follow up to the May 17th workshop that we went over. So as the superintendent stated, just here to answer questions, receive feedback on the plan. The previous plan was board approved December 8 of 2020 through June of 25. And really the reasoning behind bringing a new plan is we've pretty much have exhausted the goals, objectives, the refresh rates, and really want to, moving forward, make sure we have a relevant public-facing document that's accurate and updated and aligned to the strategic plan, which this comprehensive plan is. And then, as the superintendent stated, certainly from a year-to-year perspective, update that plan accordingly as board policy states that we're supposed to be doing, which is board policy 7540. So really just here to answer any questions, and if there are no questions, then we'll proceed with the projection of putting this on the board agenda for July.
I'll just start off by saying, I don't know what other word. This is like an extremely comprehensive plan. I think it goes back to, I wasn't on the board, but when the board initially did this, and I mean, this is, I think it's fantastic that we're looking at the technology, because it's only going to get more robust and more. And so, I appreciate what you and your staff do for all of this. So, did I see your hand up?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was the one that asked for it to be workshopped, because I did go through the whole thing, and, Mr. Hanson graciously spent an hour and a half with me on the phone, answering my questions. So I would like to do a replay of the hour and a half phone call. But, yeah, you know, to kind of go through a summary of some of the things that we talked about, you know, and suggestions for change is, if you compare this, this report to the prior one, for example, 3.8, section 3.8, they're tables. There's a lot of tables going through the whole report. To me, table makes it look like there's a header and hierarchy, and so the prior one just had bullet points, and he and I, we talked about, he just didn't want it to go too long to eat up so much paper, but I think it's clearer if he can swap out the tables for bullet points. Then one of the things that we did talk about, because I was really concerned, and we'll talk about it in our cybersecurity, but some of the information in section 4 discloses where the fiber is, and I'm going, aren't we setting ourselves up for problems, bad actors? And as he pointed out, I want everybody to know that this is public record. And tell them what
Yeah,
you told me.
So, you know, the conduit system, you know, fiber is looked at as really a public utility at the end of the day. And from a municipality standpoint, Manatee County, they publicly, on a public-facing document, provide a GIS portal that shows the outline of the basically conduit system from a physical standpoint, from a utility standpoint. And that's something municipalities are required to do, and obviously Manatee County does that. So because we have a joint ownership in our both our own fiber network that we have with Manatee County, as well as the leased fiber that we have, it's pretty it's a known. It's not hard if you recognize, if you drive down the road and you see heading to any one of our schools or down even Manatee Avenue, you'll see a white PVC pipe with an orange tip on top of it. That's fiber optics, but that's also fiber optics for, you know, private sector, public sector, other municipalities, governments, school systems, and that's all over the country. So not as of a big concern because it's so readily, and we've been fortunate enough, I think, just globally not to see physical, you know, our biggest fear with fiber is what happens with construction and expansion of, you know, intersections, and that's usually where you'll get fiber cuts. That's predominantly what we see here in Manatee County with the large expansion that goes on because of the build out and what's occurring here in our community. So that's the biggest risk, and that's something that's very difficult to avoid sometimes as construction continues to occur throughout the county. But you know, Mrs. Foreman's point, well taken. We were going to make some minor edits, but from a public-facing standpoint, it's pretty readily available, and we're not really disclosing anything that's not already publicly available. So, but we're going to make a few modifications, and that, as the superintendent stated, in that summary document or summary of changes that we'll bring to you in July, you'll have that document as part of that executive summary. And again, the technology plan is it's a planning document. It's a tool, to Mr. Choate's point. It's a tool for awareness to ensure that, you know, the specific items across, whether it's refresh, to ensure equity. It's a planning tool for E-rate purposes, long range, which is critically important to our school district. It assists with Title I to ensure we're not doing supplanting of resources. So it lays out a planning tool document. But again, from a budgetary standpoint, the school board approves the budget annually based on that annual budget as it goes through the process, through cabinet, capital committee, et cetera, superintendent, the recommendations board members are making. We then prioritize based on that dollar amount. And this gives us a functioning document to be able to prioritize from year to year. But it also creates awareness of those high-level items as there are changeover, whether it's board members, leadership, school principals. It puts everybody kind of on the same page to make sure that we have a historical point of reference on some of the major technology items that create the foundation or framework for our school district to support technology.
And then the next item was on 6.2, the media centers. And then this, again, this is for disclosure and transparency. I suggested that we list the media centers that have been completed, because some schools are feeling, might feel slighted. So, so I think it's good for the public to see that all media centers are getting upgraded or have been, and so if we could have, the dates and for all of them. Then I'm going to skip over the ones that were good discussion, but no follow through on it. 6.8, which is the 4-year projected laptop refresh. I had asked the question, 23-24, did it happen? And he said, oh yeah, so, and explained why he wanted it on there, so I suggested that, that just in the heading that you say, completed or something to indicate that, that is done. Again, so that anyone thinking schools get preferential treatment, that's resolved. Let's see, we had some discussions about 7.14, which was where the revenue comes from, and he may make some additions or modifications there, but there are some other sources that possibly should be on there. And we talked about school internal accounts, that how rare it is, but sometimes they do pay, they may fund some technology acquisitions. So, so I'm okay on that. Let's see. Okay, and we talked about his organizational chart for covering cybersecurity, because we got some really important functions, and I wanted to make sure that one person isn't handling cybersecurity and backup, and so but that he does have a dedicated cybersecurity person.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, one of our 10 data center engineers is completely dedicated to cybersecurity. Again, cybersecurity is a team effort across all facets of technology, all the way down to the end user at the end of the day, because each end user has a password. So, but we do, to Ms. Foreman's point, I wanted to assure the board, we have a primary engineer that specifically is in charge of cybersecurity, and works very closely with all our areas, and obviously works very closely with me, from vendor risk assessment all the way through updates and what's occurring across our entire infrastructure platform.
And interesting part of our conversation had to do with 10.4, and that's the IT service, the solution service desk. And every month we get copies of the open ticket items for service requests from Agitech, but one thing we're not being told about, and I frankly was not aware of, is that our in-house department technology team handles some ticket items. And I think it would be very interesting for us to see how many ticket items, how many ticket items were handled by our business analysts, how many by our external, and over the years. And it would show us not only the increase in ticket items, I'm assuming that there's an increase, but there could be a decrease, but the volume, but also how much we are able to handle in-house, because I think ultimately a good goal for the district would be to move as much in-house as we could, because it's just going to make it make it easier to function. So anyway, just passing that along. Let's see, okay, this one, and I just wrote down page 69, which is not helpful when there are no page numbers.
Yes, and we will be adding page numbers.
That's been,
We've been working on, the document will be fully ADA compliant, and one of the big changes is when you go into the table of contents electronically, it's a public-facing document, it'll be ADA compliant, but you'll also be able to click on the table of contents and go specific to the page. But as we were doing the changeover and remove some footer, the page number in the footer was removed. So we are, in July, when we public face the document, it will have page numbers.
Okay, I believe it's under section 11, which is the use of technology in classroom and media centers. But it also talks about 11.1.3, which is PeopleSoft and training. And there, I put it down as a to-do item, is for our internal auditors, CRI, because when they go in to do an audit with any of our department, they are now inquiring about PeopleSoft and including it in their reports. And I think it would be very, very helpful to them if they use the checklist. I guess there's a questionnaire or checklist locally. And if they can be given a copy of this entire report, but also what our people are looking at in terms of PeopleSoft, I think that would be much better, than just going in and asking someone in the department that they're auditing, hey, how's PeopleSoft doing for you? Let's, kind of pass this along to them. Then on 11.1.5, which is also really important because it's the ADA, the district ADA compliance training. As you know, our website is under scrutiny to be ADA compliant. And because of that, an awful lot of our reports, both CFOC and audit committee and budgets, things got pulled off. So it's our website is less transparent than it was 2 years ago. And if there's ADA training, especially for Ms. Spray and myself, for all of the board should access it and go through that training. But I also ask that they make it available to the audit committee and CFOC members and Mr. Dye, because Mr. Dye is he's leading us in ADA compliance and what we really have to do. So I have asked for that, and I do plan to do the training, but I just definitely want our people to, our advisory committees to have a better understanding of what's required. Let me see, leadership programs. Oh, okay, now we talked about that. Page 72, section 13. Student and staff data privacy. This is a concern of mine. I'm not going to talk about it here. Never mind. I'll talk about it later in the shade. And then
where it's cooler.
Absolutely, absolutely. And protect us from the storms. And I guess that's kind of it. So that was an hour and a half condensed in 10 minutes. What do you think?
That was good.
Yeah,
Impressive
fantastic.
summarization.
yeah.
I know Mr. Tatum had a question.
Probably for Dr. Weissong. So in previous meetings on these types of topics, there was just some concern about our contract and with PRP and getting that all kind of maybe in the new contract that we have and making sure we have good service from the contractor, are you confident that that's all moving in the right direction?
Yes, the contract with the maintenance provider has been renegotiated, and it should be ready for the board to consider and vote on at our next meeting on June 25th.
Great. That's the only question I have. Thank you.
I'm trying to, because I don't have a page number, sorry. I know I probably had to go through all that. My point for all of this, we have, how many pages is it, Ms. Foreman?
110.
110 pages. I don't see dollar amounts other than spread out. A whole number, is there a whole number somewhere I saw in one of these slides? Over the next 5 years?
I believe in section 7, funding, it shows, and basically it aligns to both the capital and general fund numbers. So those
Okay.
numbers, and again, it's a planning document, so throughout the major initiatives, whether it's interactive displays, whether it's computer refresh, those numbers are all projected based on when we update, but there are costs associated based on number of devices, current cost of those devices, and then as you know, as each year happens, pricing can go down or go up, fluctuation. So again, it's a planning tool to help align for the 5-year for bigger conversations each year from a planning perspective, year to year, and then we prioritize based on those numbers that are brought to you from the superintendent when you finalize the board, and then we prioritize. But, you know, if you have X number of devices or X number of displays, you're going to get a certain number of years. And this kind of, again, from an equity as well as awareness, it allows us to prioritize from year to year based on the funding that's available.
Okay, so 7.1 major funding source.
Right, and in there's a table that shows a historical view from a general, and then the capital plan. Those numbers are aligned to the capital plan that Mr. Rinaldi brought forward as superintendent in the last meeting that covered capital. And I think there was some discussion on those dollar amounts, and those are all in alignment with that. But again, part of the E-rate piece to this and why it's effective to put that number in our planning document for technology is because, again, for E-rate, we plan 1 year in advance, but we also have to certify that if for some reason E-rate was not approved at the federal level, that we have a substantial budget where we could reprioritize. And if internet to our schools and having a network was a priority, do you have the financial means within the technology budget? Is it an item that the school board superintendent leadership prioritize? And that's why you point back to that particular document. And from an E-rate perspective, we're required from an auditing perspective to hold all documents for 10 years. So we can be audited and held liable for any of those filings for up to 10 years.
Okay. And when I'm looking at this 7.1 major funding sources, and dollars are pretty big, I just want to make a point that this is why I go back to the cell phone policy. The money we spend for equipment inside our classrooms and all of this is just a lot of money. And this just goes to the point I've made. We have tools in our classroom for our students to use. And if you look at this over a 5-year period, from what I'm seeing here, from 21 to 24, actually 4 years, and we don't know what 25 is going to be yet, correct? Because we don't know what that's going to be.
I believe in 25 I put to be determined just because
Right.
the board hasn't finalized, so I didn't want to make,
Right.
obviously we've brought forward numbers to the board, but you haven't approved this document either, so,
Right.
the numbers are there. And then again, remember, on the general fund, a large majority of that covers 4 cost centers and 90+ staff. So there's a significant number, and I think it alludes to, that in that paragraph in
Right.
funding where, a significant dollar amount goes towards staffing, so we've included that in that
Right,
figure.
7.1.1.
Correct.
Right. Okay. This is a lot. I went through this like a couple of times, but I certainly appreciate Ms. Foreman's pulling this and looking at this in detail. I'm glad you did that, so that's gonna give us a little more time to digest it, because it was a big document. It was a
Yes.
huge, and I didn't see the 5-year before, so this is almost sticker shock to me, but not so much either, because technology is expensive. You know, when you look at all the, well, even with the CFOC, all of the documents they looked at, all the licensing fees that we have to pay, it's a lot. It's a lot. So, okay.
You got anything? I'm good. Anything else to add?
No.
Okay.
Thank you for your support.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. We'll make those adjustments, and
Be fun to
if
look
you
at
have
the
any
next one.
additional feedback, don't hesitate to reach out.
Awesome.
I thank you. I
Thank
just,
you,
I
Ms.
just
Warren.
want to say publicly, I really appreciate Mr. Hanson and the IT department.
Yeah.
They're keeping us out of trouble that we don't even know.
No, that the trouble exists.
Yes, yes, and so it's,
Thank you. Our team worked incredibly hard on the plan to full transparency to put that out there and make it publicly available, and certainly appreciate the board's support. And I know our schools and students appreciate it as well.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This workshop is complete. We got about an hour and a half. We're gonna come back at 1 o'clock for our shade meetings board. I believe there's lunch upstairs. Seeing thumbs up. I don't know if it's there now, but it will be.
My calendar said we were doing cybersecurity at noon. Is that pushed off?
Yeah, it's all been, it was at 1 o'clock.
1 o'clock?
I thought it was at 1 from the very beginning.
Okay.
We advertised for noon so that if there was a change in schedules or whatever,
Oh,
you
like
would
it
not
ti-
have to sit
gotcha.
and wait. But I think 1 o'clock's probably
1 o'clock.
closer to the actual start time. If we can start earlier, we'll round everybody up.
And
Okay.
Mr. Jorgensen's aware of that? Okay, thank you.
All right.
Ms. Cox is saying yes.
All right. So we are adjourned. Thank you.